Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, February 12th, 2009. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. With this week, a mead honey experiment with home mead maker Mike Lozano. Mike shares small batch meads with Steve, Andy, and me that have been made with different honey varieties. We taste the difference each honey has on the character of the meads. Well, if you're new to home brewing and would like to get into the hobby for the first time, check out our website, basicbrewing.com, where you can find archives of our audio and video podcasts and our DVDs to walk you through basic and more advanced brewing techniques. And you can follow me on Twitter. My username is Basic Brewing, all one word. And, as if I didn't have anything else to do, I've created a Basic Brewing Radio and Basic Brewing Video page on Facebook, along with a profile for my official hosting capacity here. You can look for Basic Brewing James to find me, Basic Brewing being one word, again, James being kind of the last name there. I've posted a couple of videos and some photos to the Basic Brewing Radio and Basic Brewing Video Facebook page, so check that out. And I'll be sending out notices to fans of the page when new episodes are posted and so on. Our 2009 Brewers Logbooks are still in stock. You can check them out on our online store, basicbrewingshop.com. And thanks again to everybody clicking on the Amazon.com associate link on our basicbrewing.com site. Whenever you think of Amazon, think of us and click on our associate link first. It won't cost you any extra, and you'll be helping us to bring you this show, and we appreciate your support. John from Adelaide, Australia, emailed me a news story about some of the fires that are happening in that part of the world. And this particular story was about fires that have devastated wineries in the Yarra Valley. And I know there have been many people, unfortunately, killed and left homeless in those fires. And our thoughts are with you all down there and with the families and loved ones of those that have been lost and those that have lost property, which is devastating enough. I hope if you're a listener to this podcast that you're okay and that the devastation is limited as much as possible. It's always heart-rending to hear stuff like that. But on a more pleasant note, Chris from Washington State wrote in after hearing Casey, Andy, and me struggling with the pronunciation of a particular hop. Chris says, having grown up in the Yakima Valley, or is it Yakima Valley? Now I got to figure out how to pronounce that. The Yakima Valley, and working for the Washington State Department of Agriculture as a hop inspection supervisor, I can tell you that you pronounce it Atanum. Atanum. It's a Yakima Indian language word, and it refers to the Atanum Range that runs through the Yakima Valley. Appreciate that, Chris. Chris says that as his job as hop inspection supervisor, he got lots of free hops. Now he says he's working at Washington State University in the barley breeding program, so it sounds almost as fun as being a hop inspector. More on the topic of hops. Joe from Delaware, Ohio writes in regards to the podcast about growing hops in containers and the question about growing hops downward. I was able to get hops to grow toward the ground. My hops are planted in the ground, and the ones near the end reached the top of the trellis, so I just started them down the guy wire, and they seem to do just fine. Joe says this wasn't the whole plant, but just one vine, so it may not be the same as doing a whole plant, but I think it's possible. And Joe says for $4, the cost of a rhizome, it's worth a try, right? Well, thanks, Joe. Always good to hear from people with practical experience. I got a couple of emails following our Basic Brewing video episode on reusing yeast by racking fresh wort onto the yeast cake of a previous batch. Silver from Portland, Oregon writes, dumping wort directly onto the tube from a previous batch has not let me go more than 3 batches without infection. This happened twice, and I won't ever do it again. Since then, I've learned how to rinse the yeast. Thanks, Silver. Yeast rinsing or washing with water is on my list of things to cover in the video podcast, so stay tuned for that. But then I got this from Jürgen. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. Jürgen says, I'm a German living in happily homebrewing in Cebu, Philippines. I've not much chance to get fresh yeast here, so for me, reusing the yeast is one of the best ways. I use my yeast over and over, up to 4 or 5 times, and no problem so far. I even think the yeast is getting better, maybe because the first batch is with dry yeast. So, this may be a case of your mileage may vary. Some like reusing the yeast cake, some don't. Jürgen continues with a question. Sometimes I use the yeast that is left from the secondary fermenter. So is there any problem you can think of, or why is the yeast cake better from the primary? Well, most of what I've read says that reusing the yeast from the primary is better, although I don't have any personal experience to back that up. On the one hand, you'll get more yeast in the primary, but you'll also get more trub, and one would think more dead yeast. And on the other hand, when talking about the yeast rinsing technique, in that technique, you end up wanting the yeast that takes the longest time to flocculate out. So in that case, using that logic, wouldn't you want the yeast from the secondary, since it took longer to filter out, to flocculate out? I don't know. If you have an opinion on that or have any data to back it up, drop me a line at james@basicbrewing.com or just use the contact form on basicbrewing.com. Please don't forget to tell us where you're from. And if you have a name that I might need help with, please give me a pronunciation, and also check your email address to make sure that I can get back with you. And take me off your spam list or put me on your good list or whatever you have to do to make sure that my email gets back to you. No legislative news this week other than the Utah home brewing bill is supposed to have a hearing in front of the state Senate committee on Thursday, the day you're probably hearing this podcast. Hope to have an update on that next week, so stay tuned. Now, we here at Basic Brewing love mead, along with beer. So when Mike Lozano offered to include us in another of his small batch mead experiments, I was pretty excited. Mike took 6 varieties of honey and prepared meads in the same way, using the same yeast, to see how each would compare. Well, Mike Lozano, welcome back to Basic Brewing Radio.
Thanks, James. It's been a while.
Yeah, it has. And we're in the studio here. Andy Sparks from thehomebrewery.com.
It's always a treat to be here in the studio with you guys.
And Steve Wilkes from basicbrewing.com.
From somewhere. The usual suspects.
And we're here to talk about meads, as we generally do when we have Mike present. And you have set us up with a bit of an experiment here, Mike, and lead us into it. What are we getting into?
So if you remember from last time when we did the beer yeast mead experiment, we had taken orange blossom honey and added different beer yeasts to do the fermentation to see if the yeasts attributed any different taste characteristics to the honey. And I think, if you remember back, there was a significant change in taste between the different yeasts.
Mm-hmm. That was our Orange Blossom special, wasn't it?
It was indeed.
That's what I thought.
I knew somebody had to say that.
Yeah.
I'm glad it was you.
Yeah.
So from that batch, I think there was a universal opinion that the American ale yeast, the 1056, was the best of the bunch. Mm-hmm. And I agreed. It was. I think the clean fermenting characteristics of that yeast, which doesn't assert itself, just lets the honey characteristic come through. So I said, okay, cool. Let's take that yeast and let's apply it to different types of honey and see if we can get a gauge of how well these honeys do on their own in traditional meads. So that's what we have here. Each one of these batches was a 0.8 gallon small batch, which had about 2.5 pounds of honey in it, 10 cups of water, which comes out to a starting gravity. I was shooting for 1100. And since the yeast tops out at about 12%-ish, looking at, each one of them comes out to about a final gravity of 1015 to 1020. So it's really close on each one of the batches. But what we're really looking here is just to have enough sweetness behind so that we can gauge the honey characteristics. This wasn't a fermentation experiment, thank goodness.
And
fermentation at the small batch level is an adventure, to be sure.
And in alphabetical order, we have avocado, orange blossom, raspberry, sage, tupelo, and wildflower. And part of our task here in the studio is to try to guess which one is which, because you're not going to tell us ahead of time, right?
Oh, no. No, that would ruin the fun of it.
So it's stump the panel.
Stump the panel. It also keeps you from having a perception before you taste the batch of what you should be tasting. Because, we're really looking at, can you taste the honey characteristics? Is this a tasty honey for mead making? Does it translate well into mead? The other thing I'm looking for is, did the batch clear on its own? So these batches are not treated post-fermentation. They were cold crashed in a refrigerator for a couple of months, but they were otherwise not treated after fermentation. So we didn't do anything to kill yeast. We didn't put any kind of fining agents before or after. Nothing. So I like to be as hands-off as possible with my honeys. If I have to do fining agents, that's okay, but I'd rather not. Mm-hmm. So this is a way to take a bunch of honeys that I had lying around and see which ones would clear on their own.
Well, cool. Well, shall we get started?
Absolutely.
With the H1, is that where we're going to start?
To start with the H1, the H esoterically stands for honey.
And it looks pretty darn clear.
It looks mead-like. This is the Basic Brewing Mead Hall.
Valhalla. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers. Cheers.
Well, take a little sniffy sniff. I would venture that this might be the raspberry. But
what do you think it tastes?
I haven't tasted it yet. I'm doing the sniffy sniff part.
Okay.
He's not wearing his armband.
Yeah. It smells beautiful.
Yeah, it's very floral.
But I'm getting almost like rose petals and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's very fruity. Well, that's good.
I'd go with the raspberry, just as a guess. I think that's...
Well, now that I'm tasting it, let me look
what do
at the
you
list
think?
again. It's very nice.
Well, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
Smooth. I've heard it called smooth.
Well, it's just a very nice balance with the slight sweetness.
Yeah.
Now, did you follow the same kind of general rules that you followed in our mead podcast that we did in detail of fermentation and nutrients and such as that?
With a small batch, it's very, very difficult to do that, and you end up just by sheer mechanics, even with the small activator smack packs, to a great degree overpitching. So I did an initial bit of a nutrient. I also adjusted for the pH. You always have to adjust your pH. But I didn't do a lot of nutrient pitch after that. I just let them go because they're so small, and the yeast works so quickly on the small batches, even with the activator packs. So the activator packs were very vigorous in their puffing. So the yeast were good. Didn't have to add any nutrient, and they all fermented out really well.
So, did you use an activator pack per batch, or how did you divide the yeast out?
Oh yeah, so one activator pack per batch, because trying to take liquid yeast and do an even pour in each one would be next to impossible. And of course, if you try to pour it all into a glass and then pour it from there, you're inviting an extra step of infection. So it's easier just to buy one per, cut it off, throw it in.
Well, I'm mighty impressed. This is very good.
Yeah, very clean. It's very clear. I don't know. I don't really have a guess. It's a little orangey to me.
Yeah, a little bit, and then also I haven't got a clue what Tupelo honey should taste like. So but when Andy said raspberry, I went, well, I can go with that.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't have done that.
This
it
is
was my
indeed
first reaction. I figured I should say what first comes to my mind.
You're good at that stuff, though.
This is the orange blossom batch.
Well,
A little tricky because we needed to start off with the baseline, and I figured, hey, let's start off with the baseline that did so well last batch, so we can say, okay, this is what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to taste like with this honey.
So if you're scoring at home,
yes,
we're 0 for 1 or 0 for 3.
I said orange.
You did.
said orange.
Yeah, actually, you did.
That's just why I brought up the scoring thing.
Yeah, there you go.
So it's got really good residual sweetness. You get all the characteristics of the honey from the taste and the aroma, which is very important, and it fermented clear on its own. So, goodness all around.
Yeah, that's
very good.
Oh, yeah.
A little rinsey rinse.
Okay.
On to number 2.
So how many of these have you made mead with before, Mike?
I've made a lot of orange blossom. I've made some with wildflower, which turned out really well. The other 4 I have not used to make traditional meads before. I've blended them in with others, but never on their own.
Looks very similar. It's a little cloudy.
Right. That was the first thing I was going to say, is that this one did not clear completely.
Oh, my goodness.
Wow.
That's a completely different...
no kidding.
Completely different.
My first impression is
smell.
pears, but I see that's not listed, so...
Well, you'd be amazed at what you can pick up in different honeys. So this is one of the great things about doing these kind of experiments, is that, so I didn't know that smell was in the honey.
My first impression was alcohol.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it's a bit harsh, sort of, at least compared to the orange blossom.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of astringency at the back end.
Yeah, it's at least the aroma is not nearly as smooth as the orange blossom.
Still good, though.
It tastes real good.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess raspberry each time until it is raspberry, okay?
I'm going to go with avocado.
You think so?
No, but that's what I'm going to go with. Because I think I might have a sense of what sage would taste. I'm going to be completely wrong here, but it's like I think I know what sage would taste like, and although this could be kind of sagey.
Well, I was gonna say sage just for the heck of it. You're gonna go with avocado. I don't know how would you describe the flavor? I mean, we should, this is a radio program.
I'm getting some kind of tropical notes almost in the flavor.
Some tropical fruits.
Like a juicy fruit gum. A
little bit, yeah.
Definitely very tropical. I'm liking it. I'm definitely tasting some differences from the orange blossom.
Oh yeah.
It doesn't have as full of a mouthfeel. I don't think, as the orange blossom did.
Well, I'm assuming that you got to taste each one of these honeys as you were going through making these meads. That would be interesting right now. I'm kind of wondering what these honeys taste like. What does raspberry honey taste like different from apple blossom? I haven't ever tasted the two next to each other, so.
Yeah, it's a fun thing to do. This batch is the sage honey.
There you go.
Yay, James.
Pulled one out.
Now,
that's 2.
The interesting thing to note about sage honey is that it is, in the version that I get, when you get it, it's almost completely clear.
Really? The honey is almost completely clear?
Honey is almost completely clear, and it is next to impossible to get to crystallize. It's one of the only honeys that doesn't crystallize on its own. So it's lighter in texture. It has a lot of flavor, but it's lighter in texture, and I think what happens is that because it's lighter in texture and lighter in body in and of itself, the alcohol comes through a little better. So if I were to make this again, I'd probably try to keep it sweet, but lower the alcohol by volume in the final batch to try to cut down on that, or just let it age.
Pretty good.
One way or the other.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, that's Yeah, I could drink a lot of that.
Oh yeah.
This is a honey that I think it will blend well. If you've got another light honey, or maybe a light white wine that you want to make a pieman out of, and you just want to add some sweetness and the honey characteristics and a little bit of aromatics to it, I think this would be a great honey to mix in with that.
So we talked about before we started recording, but we haven't since we started recording. But where do you get all these honeys?
So I use a supplier in California for some of the ones I can't get here. Myers Honey in California, and I get the avocado, the orange blossom, and the sage from them. I have a supplier in the Northwest that I have to go back and look up to get the Tupelo. Tupelo is hard to come by. It tends to be a little bit expensive, and getting it in bulk without being taken to the cleaners is a challenge. The wildflower and the raspberry I can get at my local homebrew shop here in Colorado.
This one's a lot more yellow.
Yeah, and
maybe a little cloudy.
It's too. It is as cloudy as the sage.
Yep. In the bottle, this one was actually cloudier than the sage was. So this is the third one, H3.
I'm really struck by how different these meads are.
Yeah. This is
Let me see if you guys are smelling the same thing I am off of this one.
Yeah, it's not as floral and fruity as the first couple. This one's got a little more of a. I'm not sure how to describe it.
The way that what came to my mind on this one was apple. Not sure if that's the right smell, but that's what I'm getting.
Yeah, it tastes a bit appley. Not in a cider kind of way.
No,
but in a like a fresh apple, biting into an apple kind of a flavor. And that apple's not on this list, Mike.
It's not.
threw that in as a little.
Interesting.
And it's very tasty.
Now, what is Tupelo? I mean, what is that?
Isn't there a Tupelo?
It's a place.
It's cheaper in Mississippi.
Yeah, Tupelo, Mississippi. But
isn't it a tree?
I believe it is a
call
tree.
in and tell us that. I think there's a Tupelo tree.
I believe it is a tree.
Well, I would go for Tupelo then. Just for
you're two for two. So
and
just kind of cheating.
The first ones ought to be worth more points than the last ones. Because as you get lower down the list, there are fewer choices. But this is delicious as well. I mean, this is, to me, a stronger tasting. It's the strongest tasting one that we've had so far, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't know about you guys.
Okay, I'm going to go with Wildflower, just because it's a stronger taste.
Andy,
avocado.
All right.
And the winner is 3 times in a row, James with Tupelo.
Jeez Louise!
Wow. He is good. I said I'm going to cheat off of James.
And we have not previously arranged this, have we, Mike?
No, not at all.
Oh yeah,
and we really believe that.
Yeah.
Checks in the mail.
Well, I saw that other case of mead sitting back there
with crib notes. Don't
Don't
look at my hand.
Yeah, I was looking for an excuse to buy some Tupelo honey for this, and of course the prices were a little high, so I was able to buy a small bit for this batch. I've heard some things about Tupelo. Always wanted to try it, and I finally got to try it with this experiment. And I'm glad
this is delicious.
Oh man,
it's not nearly as hard to come by as the 3-Pelo, but
or the cousin, the C3PO.
We're here all night. Thank you very much.
Yes, try the veal.
Try the veal. So, were there any challenges with this experiment that you weren't expecting?
I had the same challenges that I had with all my small batch meads, and that is typically in bottling. Bottling small batches like this is a challenge, especially on that last bottle when the mead is trying to pull the yeast into the bottle, and I'm not always successful in getting that last bottle clear. Until this batch, though, I had always tried to bottle them on my own, which is a mistake. Last time I had my wife to help me, and it was.
That was a bigger mistake.
Oh no, it wasn't. It was great.
So you bottled straight from the primary.
Straight from the primary. Yeah, if you try to do too many rackings with this, and you lose a lot of the beer or a lot of the mead either way, whatever you're making, and it's like you're losing half a bottle each rack or something. Just let it ferment, let it get done, cold crash it, bottle it straight from there.
And the more often that you handle it, the bigger risk you have of oxidizing it or contaminating it.
Exactly.
Okay, number 4.
Number 4.
And this is the avocado raspberry or wildflower.
Very good, Andy.
I'm going to get one right.
I know that.
It's hard to... Now, what's the ABV on this, do you think, Mike?
About 12.
Yeah. So we're fairly generous pours here. Getting more generous as the night goes on.
Darker color, too, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is
maybe not as cloudy as the last two. But
yeah.
No, it's not.
It's kind of a... Oh, I was going to say it was golden, but my hand was in the back of it. So no.
Well, Andy picked up on a pattern, and there was definitely a pattern there. That was on purpose. So Andy picked up on it. So there's a clue for you.
So as far as the clarity?
Mm-mm. No, the color.
They get darker.
Oh.
That tastes like raspberries.
Can you pick that up in that honey? Can you pick something up like that in the honey?
Well, that's what I'm tasting. I don't know whether it's from raspberries. I just tasted.
It's awful tasty.
It's very tasty.
Now, there's not as much aroma with this one. I don't think. Unless my nose is just getting blasted.
I was going to say my getting a little...
or rolling with the rest of me.
Yeah.
Affected there. Yeah, that's an interesting thing. With some of these honeys, fermenting actually releases a lot of aroma. I mean, if you get a big bulk, like 1 gallon of these honeys, you put your nose in it, it smells like honey. But you dilute it in water and ferment it, and then you open up the fermenter as it's going, and the entire brew room just smells of flowers from the orange blossom batch. It's just amazing.
I don't get as much raspberry maybe as you're tasting, Andy. I don't know.
That one has good body. Definitely has a lot of body.
Mm-hmm. It's delicious. I'm going to go with wildflower this time.
Well, then I changed mine to wildflower.
Yeah, I think I'll go with wildflower too.
Andy, you should have stuck to your guns. Raspberry.
Yeah.
Boom, 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 boom.
I actually think wildflower will be last. Now that that's my prognostication.
Can't wait.
But this is an interesting example of how the fruit
Evocative.
characteristics can come through in the honey, which is it's one of those wonderful discoveries about making mead.
Like I say, I didn't get the. I guess you were right, Andy, with getting the raspberry there right off, but I didn't get that.
It's not like a pronounced. It's more just kind of almost like a red fruit or kind of a ripe fruit.
There's a little bit of spice
like a
at the end.
cherry or kind of something that I'm getting. I don't know.
There's a little bit of spice at the end of that, I think.
Now, this number 5, when you open it, let me know if you guys notice anything right off.
Oh, I heard a big
Yeah.
in the background there, so you might want to open it over the sink there, Andy.
Haven't finished my mead yet.
Oh, well, take your time.
Well, I have only good things to say about this.
Yeah. Yeah, you continue to be impressive as with your skills as a mead maker, Mike.
Thank you very much. Now it's a matter of process. Now for me, I've got the process down, so it's just a matter of keeping to the process.
So is it really a mathematical thing? You said you ran the numbers earlier, so talk about that a little bit.
So running the numbers means taking what I know what a gravity of the honey should be, and with water, and trying to get a certain original gravity. Original gravity, and then calculating the final gravity of what I want the alcohol by volume to be. So I have a calculator that I download off the internet that I can put in different values and play with the values until the batch number and the original gravity get where I want, and that'll tell me how much water I should put in, how much honey I should put in, and that way I know, okay, do I have enough honey to make this batch? Do I need to go maybe with a batch half the size or whatnot? So if I've got a 4-gallon batch that I put in 12 pounds of honey, if I can only buy 6 pounds of honey, well, I'll just do a 2-gallon batch. Just running those numbers.
Now, are you always shooting for an original gravity of 1100, or does that go up and down depending on what you're trying to make?
Lately, it's been 1100 because I'm shooting for that 12% alcohol. Before, I was shooting, I was using the wine yeast, and they typically go up to 14. So I decided that the 14 was a little high. It took a little too long to age. I wanted something that was going to come out, a little closer out of the fermenter and be drinkable a little sooner. So, and that ran right into my beer yeast Mead experiments, where I, got this one which ferments very clean, gets me to 12%, and I was like, there it is. So now I reran the numbers to start with a lower original gravity than the wine yeast, and went from there.
So this one we did not get any carbonation. We didn't get a fizz.
Okay, so I probably had a little extra leftover yeast in the bottle that I pulled out for myself. It's probably one of the later bottles when I was bottling it, and it did ferment in the bottle. So lesson learned here is that cold crashing is not a guarantee of yeast killing.
Yeah. Lesson
to be learned.
There's not even any frizzante in this one. No bubble or anything.
Now this one is a fairly... I mean, harsh is a relative thing, but compared to the others, this is another one that's sort of harsh on the nose, in my opinion. More alcohol. Are you guys getting the same thing?
I smell more of it. Reminds me of the one we smelled earlier with that I described as pear, or even maybe a little kind of like appley smell in the nose.
The sage, I think, was.
Now this is going to sound odd, but it smells to me a little bit like really good hand cream, like terry lotion. I mean, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but it just has a kind of soft smell. I don't know.
Smells like my grandmother's bathroom.
Not after my Uncle John's been in it.
Oi.
Hi.
Always a fun time with this batch.
We'll be here all week, folks.
Yes.
Try the veal.
Well, I don't pick up anything really distinctive. I'm trying to, but I'd almost probably guess this would be the wildflower at this point. But then I don't know what avocado honey even tastes like or even looks like.
Right.
I'm going to go with avocado.
Well then,
yeah, I'm sticking to wildflower as the last one, so I'll go with avocado too.
Andy's by himself.
This one would be the wildflower.
Oh, no! Andy the man.
With your first impression. So wildflower is an interesting honey because it's one of those ones that isn't really a variety at all. Right? You just take your honeycomb out in the middle of a field of whatever wildflowers happen to be around and let the bees go nuts. So the varieties of wildflower honey will differ greatly from supplier to supplier, year to year. And it makes for interesting mead making because you never know what you're going to get. What I would call my very first successful batch of mead, the first mead that I made and tasted and actually tasted good, was a wildflower batch. This one may be a little iffy.
Really?
Well, and if you don't like it, send the rest to me.
Yeah. Compared to other wildflower batches, this one's, isn't... This would be maybe an 8 out of 10 instead of a 9 out of 10. Whatever.
Yeah, and when we're comparing them to these other ones that you've made here, it is... Some of these other ones are really quite stellar. And
yeah.
This wildflower honey, I would probably, if I bought a big bunch of it and did a test batch and it came out this would probably end up in my apple butter sizer. Because it'll contribute body and flavor to it, but the sizer will tend to add other things to where it masks some of the imperfections of this particular honey.
This one seems the most sweet to me, just like the most sugary sweet. And maybe for lack of a better word, the flabbiest.
That's an interesting word from Mead.
This is kind of a wine term, isn't it? Or have I?
It's a gym term.
Gym.
I think you guys are going to really like the last one for its color.
I'm going to go with avocado on the.
Yeah, I think you're
going to
copy
James.
I'm going with sage.
Is this the carrot?
The carrot is. I can't wait to do that. I think carrot mead would be fun.
And it's good for your eyes.
Yeah. Well, I need that. I'm struggling. I finally hit the age where I need glass. Oh, wow, that's dark.
See, this is what I expected the wildflower to look like. And maybe that's because my experience with wildflower honey here in the Ozarks has been that it's been a very dark honey.
Right.
So
This
it's almost
honey-
like a bourbon.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
really dark.
Smells like a bourbon.
You didn't
This
okay
honey,
this, did you?
when you look at it in the jar, it looks like molasses.
Huh.
It is thick and
Wow.
rich and very has a real pungent sweetness to it. It's like molasses. It's really is. In fact, one of the guys that I talked about this says he uses this honey in cookies instead of molasses.
Wow.
In cookies. So yeah,
And I almost get a kind of a molassesy character in the flavor.
It smells dark.
Yeah, it does. This is the cigar blend.
Mm-hmm.
But very, very clear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
so it's one of those interesting things is that when you have a dark honey, there's different materials in the honey itself with the darkness that tends to, in my experience, once you get the yeast in there fermenting and it starts to die off and clear, that it tends to aid in clumping of the yeast, which of course then makes it heavier, it makes it easier to fall out. So my general observation has been is that the darker the honey you have, the more likely it is to fall clear. Now there are exceptions, but darker honeys tend to clear on their own pretty well.
Huh. There is a molasses character.
This really reminds me of whiskey.
Huh.
I mean,
Yep.
it really does. It reminds me of a scotch or a bourbon. I'm not saying that it's that alcoholic or that it's that strong, but it really does remind me of a whiskey.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Almost
Character
like
in this,
Almost like
Go
if
ahead.
you'd made a cocktail like a Rob Roy or something like that with simple syrup or, you know, and some scotch. You know, that's pretty generalized, but wow, it's great, Mike.
This one, there's one taste in here that I think that I don't get with any other honey in a mead, and that is there's a little bit of a bitterness to it. And that is, I think, inherent in all dark honeys. There's a bit of a bitter back note to these, and that's where you get the character of the molasses characters in there, the kind of the bourbon characters there. That's a unique trait to dark honeys, I think. This is not something that I would put in front of a new mead taster,
No.
but it is definitely something you put in front of maybe, if I may be so bold, a connoisseur to say, try this. This is very interesting.
There's almost a tobacco flavor to it.
Yeah.
For us, we could say this is a man's mead.
Viking mead.
But I like it too.
Go in there. Woo!
Irish
Tasty in
Spring.
its own right.
Yeah. It's not at all what I expected.
No, me neither.
And honestly, me neither. The first time I hit that, I was expecting something completely different, and it was at first there was a tinge of and then I was thinking, well, no wait, that's interesting stuff. That's completely unique.
Boy, it is. Although I was expecting with the avocado mead to want some chips.
I think you'd be surprised if you ever saw this honey in a jar. If you go online and look for avocado honey in a jar, you look at it, you're thinking that's honey.
Does it look like I've seen buckwheat honey, which is almost black.
It is black, just like the buckwheat. Yeah, it's very, very, very dark.
And again, if you were to put the buckwheat honey along with the alfalfa honey, you could
Right.
have an Our Gang mead. Mead almost came out of Steve's nose. I did that joke just for Steve. I knew that he would. Oh, now I did get some. Ah! That's the carrot.
It's not.
Beware the carrot.
It's exerting itself. So the carrot mead actually was a happy accident.
Just like we just had.
Yeah, it's a happy accident here too.
I went down to the local homebrew shop and said, "Hey, I'm doing. What are you?" They asked me what I was doing, and I said, "Well, I'm doing this experiment because I was ordering up the little activator packs, and not a lot of people order up activator packs, oddly enough." And they said, "What are you using it for?" I said, "Well, I'm doing this, this mead experiment where I'm taking different honeys and using this particular yeast on it, and just to see, how they taste." And they said, "Oh, well, you know what? We just got this kind of cool stuff in. It's this carrot honey. Take a taste." It's a carrot honey. Never heard of carrot honey. So I tasted it, and it was probably one of those unique honeys that no one knows about. But when he tasted it, it was like, that's really interesting stuff. So he gave me a 3-pound jar of the carrot honey. He gave me a packet of Safale US-05, which is the American ale. He said, "Here, let's go make me a batch of meat out of it. We want to see what it tastes like." I said, "Okay." So I did. And the meat you're holding in your hands is the result.
Wow, this smells like a triple. Like a Belgian. Now, is this the same yeast and everything?
No, this is the Safale US-05.
Oh, okay.
But the recipe for the mixture of honey and water is the same.
So, in theory, the US-05 is supposed to be the Chico yeast, right? I mean, it's in theory the same, but from a different manufacturer, different process. And this is almost a sparkling mead because of the carbonation.
It has to be classified as so, yes, not by intent. This one didn't clear as well as the darker ones. It's still cloudy.
Ooh.
But I don't think you'll smell or taste anything nearly like this anyway.
With the fizziness.
I think it's the most floral smelling. It really had a unique bouquet. It was very nice.
That's funny. I thought it smelled, like I say, I thought it smelled like a Belgian.
Yeah. I'm not going to do
There's a straight line for you.
I'm not going to do that joke.
That Belgian needs to take a shower, I think.
No, it's got almost that candy sugar kind of smell.
I get some sort of like fruity gum or something. Some sort of candy.
Yeah, the fruit stripe gum.
Something like that.
Oh my gosh, I haven't heard of fruit stripe gum in so long.
I think that's what I'm getting.
And the little carbonation is kind of nice.
I don't know. To me, this is bitter. To me, this is my least favorite.
It's my least favorite.
Yeah.
By quite
It has a unique twang. The taste of this honey, straight, the twanginess is from the honey.
Huh, okay.
Definitely from the honey.
Huh. Well, it's not my favorite, to be honest with you.
No.
I mean, it's a bold experiment, and I appreciate your...
Yeah. Well, it is interesting. I agree. I think there's a bitterness or there's an oddness to it that I can't quite get my lips around.
I'm knocking the carbonation out of it to see if that makes a difference.
I think of this mead, people who like meads like this are the same kind of people that like the really tannic, big, bold Cabernet Sauvignon wines, which I can't stand. There's a taste for everybody.
Now, see, I like those kinds of wines. I'm wondering what this would be like with food.
It would stand up to anything, that's for sure, Steve.
Yeah.
Anything spicy, this would go right with. Cut right through it.
Well, yeah. Like I say, it's not. I mean, it's not bad.
Oh no.
It's just compared to the other 6 that we've had tonight. It's not my favorite.
I'd have to say that my favorite one of the evening is the Orange Blossom. That was just absolutely fabulous, and they were all very good. But
it should come to no surprise that the Orange Blossom is one of the most often used honeys in making mead. What was it? I think it was 2 years ago, and the Mead Festival should be coming up around here pretty quick. But 2 years ago at the Mead Festival, the Rabbit's Foot Meadery Mead that won Best in Class for the traditional was made from just orange blossom honey.
The sage was pretty interesting too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think. I think the first two would probably be my favorites out of the bunch. But so what have we learned? What's your learnings for this evening, Mike? What's the experiment taught us?
So it helped confirm a belief that I put forth since I started mead making, was that the characteristic of your mead is going to be mostly determined by your choice of honey, the choice of yeast, but first and foremost by your choice of honey. If you start with a good quality honey, a great honey, your end product has a much better chance of coming out being a great mead. We've learned that there are certain honeys that clear really well. The darker honeys tend to clear very well. The orange blossom cleared very well on its own, even though it's not a darker honey. So there has to be something with the chemistry of that honey that allows for the yeast to clump together and to fall clear. There is a taste for everybody, and every honey can be made to make mead. But the end result is going to depend on your own individual taste. So this is definitely not going out and saying you should never make carrot honey. Definitely, that's not what we're saying. We're saying is that maybe the orange blossom is more appealing to a broader range of palates.
Yeah, and I was wondering if, say, with the avocado honey, which made that very dark, molassesy almost kind of flavor. Let's say that you liked that, but you didn't want it to be quite so predominant. I wonder if you might mix, say, a light clover honey with it, or, in other words, if you were to blend some honeys together for a specific purpose, if that would be advantageous.
Absolutely. So blended honey is the next frontier for me. But if you start looking at just the 6 or 7 honeys that we used here, and then thinking about all the different combinations you can get just out of these 6 or 7 honeys, that's one mighty experiment.
Do the math on that. Run the numbers.
Yeah, run the numbers on that. So I would actually think, if I were going to do something just right off the bat, I would want to try something like mixing the avocado with sage.
Yeah.
Because the sage would lighten up the avocado. The color would come out a little lighter, but I think the dark honey would also let the sage clear as well. It would clump up enough. It would have enough clumping action in it to let the batch fall clear, maybe ease off on the bitterness a little bit, or maybe even the avocado and the orange blossom to give it some more aromatics. There's some definite possibilities there.
Well, very good. This has been fun. Again, Mike.
This was great. These experiments are really, really a lot of fun, and I learned a lot more by doing something like this than I would just by going on a forum and asking people, because everybody's opinion is different. But when you do it yourself and have a controlled experiment where all the variables are the same, and you get this kind of a result out of it, where you can definitely taste the flavor differences for the honeys, it just makes it all worthwhile. It's fantastic fun.
Awesome. We appreciate your work again, and thanks to Andy, and thanks to Steve.
And thank you, James. And thanks, Mike.
It's absolutely my pleasure.
Yeah, Mike, this has been very instructive. I'm really struck at the differences in the honeys, and very appreciative of your time and efforts.
I'm glad you enjoyed it, and it was a pleasure being here.
Well, thanks again to Mike Lozano for all his work. And an experiment like that's not cheap, with all the different honeys and the yeast. So we are very grateful for his help and work again. Also grateful to Steve and Andy for helping us out as usual with the tasting. It's tough work. Remember, we've got the Brewer's Logbooks and our new Basic Winemaking Introduction to Wine Kits DVD out on our online store. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to james@basicbrewing.com, or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. And you can check out our other DVDs, Low-Tech Lagering and Decoction Mashing, Stepping into All Grain, and Introduction to Extract, home brewing on our site. And we got combo deals for you if you want to save a couple of bucks. You can see a listing of the fine folks across the country who sell our DVDs on basicbrewing.com. And if there isn't a vendor in your area, you can order it online in our online shop at basicbrewingshop.com. We've got our shirts of different colors. And also thanks to everybody who's continued to click on our Amazon.com link. We appreciate the support there. Our featured products this week that were purchased through the link are How to Housebreak Your Dog in 7 Days and Yamuna Body Rolling Foot Wakers. Thanks again, everybody. Remember, I can't tell who bought what, so no worries there. Just click on the Amazon.com logo on our site the next time you feel like Amazon shopping. We appreciate your support. And we also have associate links to the Apple Store and to Audible.com. That's all until next week. Until then, thanks for listening. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dodson, our buddy in Austin. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. So long.